So we're having just a hell of a time here. I don't even think this is going to be a podcast. Just heads up, people. We're having way too much fun for this to be anything that would be misconstrued as an interview.
Yeah, no, you wouldn't be confused.
So here with my buddy Aaron Alexander, and we were just joking about how some people might not like this podcast because we're male and we're white, and we're having a conversation.
It's true.
You guys missed that part. I got some feedback recently that my show was too bro-y, and so I thought, really, is that true? And so I did a ratio, and I counted all my male versus female guests, and I think I'm skewed about 60% female. So I thought, well, that was an erroneous take. Anywho,
I feel like in general, white men are the loudest, and so therefore their ideas end up going out the furthest. And we all live in echo chambers. And so you hear a bunch of people say a thing, and then they repeat that, and you're inside of this little. I kind of agree with those people. I find great value in bringing more women onto my podcast, even if it's like at first it's felt before like a reach in a sense, and then I feel like I learn so much from people that I don't anticipate learning the most from. Not women in general, but a lot of the episodes I've done in general, like. I don't anticipate, this is gonna be a Joe Dispenza or somebody like that, and then we have this comfort, and we kind of get into unfurling these layers about ourselves that maybe we wouldn't had we've been like set up for this big,
I agree. I think that it's like in relationship to anyone, what creates a dynamic are having a certain number of differences and not being too much the same, right?
Yep.
So you were just commenting how we have the exact same books on our bookshelf, and we have so many things in common, and we're so similar that could make for a really boring friendship or conversation. But there are enough differences where we can bounce ideas off one another and create some contrast and learn from each other. And in that way, just inherently due to the different genitalia that I possess and a female guest possess, presumably, let's not assume anything anymore. I think that I've had some of the best conversations with my female guests just because their perspective is going to be, at least at a core level, so much different than my own. And I never set out to do a show where, I'm going to record mostly women guests. I just find some of the most fascinating people that fit within the context of my topic base happen to have vaginas.
That's great.
Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
But then I still get shit. I mean, I think I could have a show that's like 99% over 60% women, and somebody's still going to bitch that it's about the 1% or whatever. I don't know. I've learned I have to just ignore everyone that judges people based on the color of their skin or their gender. Because that's not how I judge people. I judge people on their character and how interesting they are and what they're doing in the world.
Yeah. So then the whole feminist movement can go too far in the other direction, where it's like, like men don't know anything. And I was talking to a friend recently, and she's like, yeah, literally just last year, I was completely convinced women were a superior sex. And I'm like, no, that's not it. Like you're missing it. We both have, yin yang, Shiva Shakti, masculine. Like we're balancing each other out here. That's what we're doing.
It's about equality.
Yeah.
Equality. And I think there's perhaps repercussions from eons of inequality, and perhaps the pendulum has swung the other way to some people. But anyway, who gives a shit about that? Just be a good person and be as loving and kind as you can, and you win.
Yeah, and tap into those aspects within yourself and realize that masculine, feminine doesn't necessarily just pertain to penis, vagina, but it's also like I think that the interesting thing why perhaps it seems as though, at least in the echo chambers that I live in, that there are more loud white men talking about their books and things and all that, is they're I had an idea. It's going now.
You obviously not one of them.
No, they're listening. No, because that's a masculine quality, is to be more vocal and out and forward and go and get done and do. Whereas that feminine quality is more of this nurturing and listening and supporting and loving. And in our culture, though, we don't see that as being like, it's not praised on the cover of Muscle and Fitness. You see The Rock sweating and veins and pushing a sledgehammer against a tire or something. You don't really see someone, petting a puppy or foam rolling or meditating so much. It's just not praised in our culture, the way the culture is presently. But I think that's in process of transitioning, because if you're too far on one side of the spectrum for too long, inevitably burnout, it will come, and eventually you have to come back. And I wonder, have you noticed that? Have you noticed with like going into burnout?
Well, I've worked a lot on creating balance between those energies. And that's not to say that I've perfected it, but I have a very easy time going into the allowing and passivity of feminine energy and meditating all day. Like that's super easy for me to do, and just like, cool, the universe is just going to provide. I'm just going to lay back in the cut and chill. I would say, and just being creative and things like that, manifesting in a more faithful, inactive way. For me, it's like the pushing and driving and being on task and following a schedule and having everything in sort of a rigid linear container that would be more masculine, I find to be a little bit more difficult, and I have to really push myself to be in that. So I'm always trying to find a balance between like making shit happen and allowing shit to happen.
Yeah. So as
there's a little bit of both in there, I think.
So as a heterosexual male, it would be of greatest benefit likely for you to find a human being, that has female genitalia that happens to occupy more of that like masculine side of the spectrum, to be able to create that containment. Perhaps I'm just spitballing.
And I will say fuck no to that.
Yeah, right. Okay. So it's not helpful for you to be with someone that does have more containment and a little bit structure and all that can get shit done.
Absolutely not. No.
All right.
No, what happens for me because I've experimented with that dynamic and I'm not a fan at all. And I would venture to say that the women that have been in that role have not been either. No, in a relationship like that, for me, what brings out my ability to like handle shit and get shit done is the feminine energy on the other side. In other words, that's what helps me to create that balance. But I would never, ever want to be in the role where I'm like, I'm just going to do painting and like expression dance today, honey, and you go make the money. I'm a spiritual guy. Fuck to the no.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. And no offense to anyone that takes that route. I mean, as you said, it's not about what genitalia you have. It's like what energetic role do you want to serve in the relationship? And predominantly, I feel much more rooted and grounded in the masculine role in a relationship. But I also can be creative, and I'm very emotional and can access my feelings and articulate them in, I think, a healthy way most of the time. And I'm pretty good at that. But I definitely am not into like being in the following position in a relationship.
Yeah. And then each relationship is always, they'll bring out kind of different poles in each individual. So that's something I feel very similarly, in that I really value being with a feminine woman, because it's all of a sudden brings out these masculine qualities in myself.
Yeah.
Whereas
exactly.
if I'm not around that, then I might lean more towards passivity and listening and all of those things, and more creativity and throwing color at the wall, but not really getting anything done because there's so many things that I'd like to do. But put that feminine pull in the room, and all of a sudden I'm like, okay, well that's been established, that that they're holding that down. I'm going to fill in these other parts, which actually fulfills me and makes me feel like a man.
Yeah.
It's a nice sensation.
Totally.
Like to be a human being with occupying male genitals, to feel like a man is very fascinating. It's a nice sensation. It's actually been foreign to me.
There's no better, more grounded feeling for me. It's just the best.
Yeah.
It's the best. Like in a micro situation, let's just say like you're in communication with the feminine, living with the feminine, dating the feminine, etc. And they're being overtaken by emotion, and they really need help and support, and they need to just express that. And when you have the ability to just breathe through that and just hold space for whatever they're experiencing and not cave and start using so much empathy that now you've been sort of caught up in that tornado, but you can really sit there and be supportive and loving and have empathy and compassion for that person, and be supportive in a way that helps them to work through it. That feels amazing. Provided it's not directed toward you in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
But I just mean like, fuck, I had a really hard day, babe. Like I'm freaking out. And you're just like, cool, I got you. What do you need?
Yeah.
You know, what I've noticed, it's so great when we sit down because like I have my notes, you have your book, and it's like, we're not talking about any of the shit we planned on. But this is what happens when two friends get together, and this is how we support one another. But how I know that, that there's a strong feminine energy across from me or in the room or that I'm dating in a relationship with is if I have this feeling that I would jump in front of a car to save their life, I would take a fucking bullet for them. I would sacrifice anything and everything to help them to feel safe or to be safe. That's how I know that that polarity is there. And that feeling, even though there might not ever be a lion that you have to shoot or a burglar that you have to hammer over the head with a bat or, you know, a speeding train that you have to dash in front of and grab them out of the way to your own peril or anything like that. Those things might not happen, but it's like, it's a feeling that when the shit goes down, you know that you are ready, willing, and able to do that, to protect and serve. Actually, I was thinking about my book today, which is in my head. And I was, you know, sometimes chapters just pop in and I was thinking about, God, how important service is. And then in the context of being of service to the world at large, I thought about the term that the police use, protect and serve. And I thought, God, what a great feeling it is, not only to be of service, but when you're in a role of a protector. Even just my sorry, Cookie, but my dumb little dog, my silly little dog, you know what I mean? It's like, I don't know, does she really need my protection? Kind of. If I take her in the car and she jumps out of the car and wants to run into the street, I feel so good when I'm like, wait, Cookie, don't run in front of the bus. You know, it's just, I get to protect this little creature that's in need of that at times, you know, and it feels so good. I think it gives me in my masculine a sense of purpose.
Yeah, purpose is so important. So that's like one of the chapters in the book is all about touch, and we get into community, and you know that's like the primary fuel that runs the human organism is the sensation of purpose, two, the sensation that you're loved and a part of the tribe. You know, and so I think it's such a powerful thing when you can share that contact and connection with another person, and someone can, you know, put their hand on your leg or, you know, give you a snuggle or give you a hug and take a breath and actually have a meaningful connected moment, that it's not like one of those like hip out hugs. You're like, oh, like, okay, it's good. Just like, you know, like shoulder bump thing. Like, okay.
Those are the Me Too hugs,
like,
though, bro.
Like, do you hate me?
That's Me Too hugs.
That's a Me Too
I hug women like that because I'm so paranoid. And I've had women be like, could you give me a real hug? That was please, a weird hug. Yeah. And I'm like, well, I don't want to touch your tits. It's, you know, like, I'm waiting to see how hard you're going to squeeze and then I'll come in. I'm not going to be the male who's like full body hug.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's very confusing world.
Weird time. I'm still going to err on the side of caution.
But I think it's an interesting thing of, I view, since creating the chapter in the book about touch, I truly view touch as a nutrient, just the way that I would view photons from the sun as nutrients, you know, and or as cabbage or kale or whatever. Like, I think that when a person doesn't have that physical contact in their lives, like right now I have Cookie on my lap and I'm kind of getting a little like touch therapy as we're going. I appreciate it.
She sits with every guest like that. It's so awesome. Cool. Yeah, it's great. I kind of get, I get a little jealous when she does that. I'm like, what am I, chopped liver?
Well, yeah, she knows where I think she's being supportive of the guest. I think she's like on your team.
Right.
You know, she's got like that intuitive sense of what's going on, which is great. But literally, children in particular, I would say adults as well, but it's more studied with the children, when they don't have physical contact in their lives, they experience this thing called failure to thrive, which literally their metabolism slows down and they go into this kind of like a metabolic winter, in a sense, where their body's like, okay, we're going to hibernate now for a little bit because we don't have the signal that we're being supported and cared for by the tribe or our mother or our father. And so if we don't have that regular contact, then we slow down, and literally our emotional, psychological, and physical development starts to slow down to a snail's pace or not at all. Examples of that is like the Romanian orphanages. There was an overabundance of Romanian babies because the dictator at the time, in the late 80s, was telling everybody to have as many babies as you possibly could. Everything fell apart. And they didn't have enough caretakers to actually touch the kids. They had all the food that they needed, but they didn't have the touch. And what they found was the kids were like, dude, these kids aren't growing. They're getting all jacked up. What's the deal? And then they add more caretakers into the situation. And all of a sudden things start to pick up again. Same thing happens with kids in incubators. When they just add a little bit of physical contact, a little bit of massage, like 15 minutes a day, all of a sudden those kids start growing and they get released from the incubator sooner.
Dude,
special.
Dude, that's so funny. I've had a lot of mind reading happening today. There's been a lot of ESP, but as you're talking, a word, because you're listening, but you're still thinking about the next, direction you want to take the conversation. And as you're talking about that lack of human touch in the babies in Romania, the word in my mind is incubator, the incubator, the incubator.
Oh, wow. I was wondering why you're smiling as I said incubator. I was like, did I have something in my face? What's going on?
We'll check this out. And I don't think that this affected me as adversely as those kids in the study where it was, months on end, they're not getting touch and whatnot. But as I guess I'm also kind of thinking about some realizations I had during my last ayahuasca experiences as I prepped this week to go to Soltara Center in Costa Rica this Friday at the time of this recording. And so I'm kind of reflecting on some of the insights that I had the last time when I went to Rhythmia, maybe almost a year ago or so. And it's a story I've told on the podcast before. So, if you've heard this before, folks, just go take a cigarette break or whatever. But
be squatting as you do it like they do in Thailand and start liberating your hips and open up your pelvic floor muscles.
If you're going to smoke, please do it in a squat.
Do it in a deep squat position.
Yeah, a la Thai.
Get some pad Thai while you're at it.
Driver on break.
Yeah.
No, but in the fourth night of those ceremonies, I would have had what would be considered a nada. Like I had no discernible psychoactive experience at all. I just felt really sick and just laid there and did my best to surrender that was what was supposed to happen. After 2 cups, I was like, all right, something better happen now. Nothing happened. And there was that moment where I could have gone up for a 3rd cup and pushed myself over the edge into this psychedelic experience that I had experienced the 3 nights prior to much insight and beauty. But I just felt so sick. I'm like, no, I can't do it because if it doesn't work and I feel more sick than this, I'm going to be bummed. So I just laid there and just writhed around for a few hours. Not a pleasant experience whatsoever. But there was one point for about a minute where I just sort of drifted off into a daydream and I saw myself in the hallway of a hospital. And this all happened really fast. And it wasn't a hallucination. It was just sort of like a daydream. It wasn't even like an ayahuasca vision. It was just like, oh, let me see where this thought goes. And you follow that thought and this thought. And there I was in this hospital in the hallway, and I was like, oh shit, this is me being born. And then I saw a door, and I'm like, oh, I'm being born behind that door. And I opened the door to the hospital room, and my mom's on the gurney thingy that you have babies on, and here comes little alien embryo, bloody Luke thing. And the nurses grabbed me and put me on her chest and the umbilical cord and everything. And my mom's like crying and smiling and just so happy. And I'm like being held. And then the nurses are like, oh, not so fast. And they come and grab me and just and whisk me away and take me down the hall and put me alone in this other room in an incubator. And they're just like, peace. And they leave me there and shut the door.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was, because I wasn't like high, I wasn't experiencing the emotionality of it, like some of the other healing memories I had where I like refelt those experiences. It was more of an intellectual insight of, I guess I probably have some abandonment issues. So that's come up for me in relationship in the past few years a number of times where I'm like, well, I'm really afraid of losing this thing, in a sort of abnormally extreme way.
Yeah.
And so I got that insight and it was like, oh, that's interesting. I was abandoned when I was born. I wonder if that's anywhere close to the truth. So I texted my mom the next day. I was like, hey, you probably don't know what ayahuasca is, but I'm doing it. And here's this vision I had last night. And she texted me right back. She's like, yeah, that's exactly what happened, except there were 2 differences to the real story versus the vision that you had. They wrapped you in a blanket first before they put you on my chest, just a minor detail. And then when they put you down the hall in the incubator, your dad showed up right after you were born and they let him come in and see you. And then after that, you were in there for 4 days and nobody could touch you or be in there. because of risk of infection and stuff like that. So who knows, how much of an impact that had. But what I do know is in the natural world, either an infant would be stillborn and just not make it, or it would make it and it would be held by countless members of a tribe.
Yep.
You would be touched constantly. If it wasn't by the woman who birthed you, it'd be by the men and the women and your hunter-gatherer of 50, 60 people. You'd be passed around like a little fucking hot potato,
Especially if I'm not sure whose kid is who, because they're copulating with each other.
Yeah, totally. Right.
Fancy word for they're all doing it with each other.
Yeah. When your mom is the village bicycle, that could be the case. And I mean that in the most positive sense, by the way.
Can I turn my audio up on here a little bit so I can hear my...
Sure, no problem.
Sorry, that's probably...
How's that?
Oh, yeah, there we go. I'm a narcissistic millennial, so it's helpful to be able to hear my own voice.
It's funny you say that, because I was like, I can't hear him that well. Maybe I'm just talking really loud.
Yeah, no. Now we're in.
Ooh. Yeah, feel that. Feel the bass. But anyway, back to your point on how crucial that human touch is, and just, God, who knows how many of us were born in less than ideal sort of Western allopathic, medically driven hospital births, where it's just things didn't happen naturally. Being breastfed, being circumcised, C-sections, all this kind of shit. I mean, I think a lot of our trauma really begins in that hospital room. Further to your point, and I want to hear more about your perspective on this, but I really notice that I'm quite deprived often in the human touch medicine, largely because I live up here in the hills and all my friends are
Which you've created.
Yeah, I've isolated myself because I hate people. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, sometimes we run, our subconscious is there's a thing, sorry to interrupt you.
That's
but
okay.
I'll just run with it. So there's a fancy Sanskrit term, samskara, which means impression. And if you ever do any kind of like Vipassana style meditation or like study Buddhism or what have you, when you're sitting in meditation, you'll have these certain maybe sensations of like maybe anxiety will pop up or pain will pop up or sadness will pop up or something. One of these, what they refer to it as these impressions or samskaras will kind of pop up and emerge and come to the surface. It's very fascinating how we, as you are, when you're going through that experience and you're, doing the ayahuasca thing, how tangibly we can start to these images, these impressions can kind of reemerge and surface for a moment for us to potentially purge them out and release them, permanently, so you can go back into your state, which I think is, harmony and love and, light and all those things. But we have those, most of us, by most of us, I mean all of us, certainly me, have these deeply held contractive impressions, to use more like Western speak, because if I say samskara, a lot of people probably be like, oh, like, okay, I'm not listening anymore. So these impressions, these memories of like, oh, I was left, or oh, I was hurt, I was abandoned, I was, the world's not safe for whatever reason. And then when you carry those, you will have your conscious, prefrontal cortex or maybe amygdala or whatever term you want to put on it, operating system that will kind of run the show and be like, oh, that girl's legs are too fat, or her lips are too this, or she talks too slow or talks too fast, or she's too new agey or too, linear or whatever it may be. But meanwhile, perhaps the underlying system that's actually, that's going on there is there's this boy that the growth perhaps kind of slowed down at that point. And then the intellectual mind started running the show to try to protect that boy. So it's a similar thing. Like it was interesting when you were talking about being in the incubator and the doctors want to protect the boy from any type of sickness or illness. So they're doing the best thing that they can to protect them from that sickness or illness. They're intellectually following the books. Meanwhile, what the boy really needs to come online is to feel touched and loved and connected. So I think it's an interesting thing how perhaps, maybe not, your intellectual mind kind of takes you into, okay, I want to get away and get out in the hills and create separation.
Make an incubator of a house.
Yeah, I'm going to incubate myself because it's, there's bacteria and danger and all these things.
I'm going to sleep in a Faraday cage.
Yeah, exactly. But then I think as we start to release some of those deeply held contractive traumas, which is an overused word, but say impressions that we hung on to, as they start to go away, I think all of a sudden, maybe that we can find more like coherence between our heart and our head.
So do you think on a subconscious level I've sequestered and isolated myself up here in the hills because
not necessarily, I don't know, it's just interesting.
There's a sense of familiarity and being cut off from human touch.
I mean, I already struck out on suggesting that perhaps you would find value in being around more like linear structured females. I would guess you do find value in being around linear structured coworkers. So we're just a bunch of pie charts, so we need to fill that pie with, okay, I need structure, I need fluidity, I need creativity, I need sex, I need intellectual stimulation, I need purpose, and in the Western nuclear model of family, we're like, okay, at some point you'll find that one person and they're just going to fill up your whole pie chart, which is just like, it's a lot of pressure on another person. But I think in the end, we're just pie charts that need to be filled up.
Yeah. I can see that. Now I'm thinking of all the different slices of pie that I would like to have right about now.
Which pie, which slice in the pie chart do you think you could use a little more?
Well, honestly, with it's true. We have access to these different energies within ourselves, whether you be male or female. And I think that for me, what I really notice is I access those energies to a lesser or greater degree in different areas of my life. And in my work area, I do have a lot of drive and I get a lot done. I don't feel like I am, but according to the world, they're like, oh my God, you're so prolific. Like you put out so much content and you're doing here and flying everywhere and speaking. I still feel like I'm not getting anything done because I'm doing things in a very nonlinear, creative, let's do what's fun and exciting way.
Yep.
So in business, I always envision, God, I just need like a ball-busting CEO to run Luke Story Inc. that just tells me when to be, where to be, what to do, what project we're working on, prioritizing shit, having spreadsheets and Google things and Excels and all the things that I don't want to do. I just want to do the fun shit. And so when it comes
to what you consider to be fun, that's not everybody's fun.
Yeah.
Some people really like the linear stuff and like they want to crunch numbers and
I can't stand that shit. Like let's put this project in a sauna and assign dates and people to all of the tasks associated with the end goal. Like no thanks.
Ideally, we're in a community where everybody gets to do the fun shit because we were talking about like the human design thing. Like I'm a manifestor generator. You're a generator sensitive, whatever. Well, I don't know what was your generator something?
Mine was a generator with an emotional base, I think.
Yeah.
Who was the woman that did our human design?
Erin Claire, maybe? I don't know. Right? Erin's her first name.
Love to give her a shout out.
Shout out, Erin Claire. I think Claire.
I think that was it.
I'm pretty sure that's it. Erin Claire, if you're listening.
Yeah.
Thanks. But within that, though, it's like, ideally, we can live in a world where everybody gets to do the fun thing because it just so happens that we are all structured in such a way that everyone doesn't want to be the podcast host. Everyone doesn't want to be the videographer. Everyone doesn't want to be the mailman, but somebody does. Somebody finds value in those positions and, in the tribe. It's just where I think it's easily confusing in the culture we live in is we praise specific roles and then we kind of forget about other ones. Like the fact that celebrities are essentially like modern day royalty in Western culture is very fascinating. There's so many other roles. There's like oncology, there's so many roles that are like, for my conception, like maybe not more value because that's, it's tough to weigh which is more or less. But I mean, if there was like there one was running for class office, I don't know. If there was some way to weigh the value of them, somebody acting on some movie compared to somebody that's like saving lives in a hospital, you're like,
I've contemplated that too. We in our culture put a lot of value on the role of the artist. If you think about musicians and authors and actors and people that produce art. I guess not every type of art. There isn't like the needlepoint rock star of the world, perhaps, but I've tripped on that too, living in Hollywood for 30 years and working in the industry for a lot of those years, and then meeting the people, many of them who are so revered, and people want their life and want to be them and just worship them, and you meet them and they're just like a regular person who takes a shit every morning.
Yeah.
And B, oftentimes are kind of jerks and not someone you would even want to hang out with. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think it's just the nature of, I don't know.
And
it's the nature of the career that many creative people have to mold themselves into,
Yeah. And by the culture kind of like pedestalizing, I think that might be it. I've heard Alan Watts talk about pedestalizing Jesus.
I'll take that.
But putting
sounds like a word.
Yeah. So
if Alan Watts says it, it's a word.
Yeah, exactly.
He sounds so eloquent.
That's my opinion. It is. Yeah, the Brits. But by pedestalizing, if that may or may not be a word, these people, what we do in the same token is, in a sense, we kind of put them in a prison. I was thinking about that as I was driving over to your place, and I was driving through like Hollywood Hills or whatever place that I was at, and I was looking around and saw some people, walking their dogs and whatnot, and this little flicker passed through my mind of like, oh, I think that was like a celebrity. Like, who was that? I was, and then I'm like, I'm looking around. There's probably like a bunch of celebrities, right? Like, this is where the spot is. And there's literally people in buses driving by with fucking binoculars and cameras, so they can watch these people inside of their fucking zoo, and like literally, like, could you imagine being Johnny Depp famous? It would be terrible.
No. I would
like
not.
He messed up.
Yeah. Yeah,
He dropped the ball. He got too famous.
I've contemplated this because in this neighborhood, as you said, in the Hollywood Hills and in Laurel Canyon, there are a lot of celebrities that move here. I think just because you can be a little more reclusive and have your big hedges and walls and kind of be hidden away, and it's pretty. There's trees and more fresh air and whatnot. So I get why a lot of them move here. And sometimes you will see a celebrity walking their dog or driving up your street, and it's like, oh shit, they live on my street?
Yeah.
I must be somebody.
Yeah, I'm making it.
But I think about like when I'm just out in life, and of course it doesn't happen like at the mall in North Dakota like it would to Johnny Depp. But if I'm, at somewhere where people into health and spirituality are frequenting, it's not uncommon that someone's like, oh, what's up? Are you Luke? I listen to your podcast. And I feel so grateful when that happens. And I know I'm so like unimportant and not famous, and I'm not being self-deprecating. I mean, it's just the reality. A million people have
It's all average. It's all relative.
Yeah, a million people have a podcast. But when that happens, most of the time I'm like in a pretty good mood because I'm out and about where those people are likely to run into me. But I'm like, dude, there are so many days where like I don't feel like talking to anyone. And if I was trying to just go to Whole Foods and like grab a quick avocado or whatever, and a bunch of people were trying to talk to me, I would be hating it, or let alone the paparazzi kind of thing. Like I was talking to Shaman Dirk the other day, and his girlfriend is a European
princess.
Royal, right? A princess, like a legit princess.
Martha.
Yeah. And I don't even know if we were talking about it on the podcast, but I was like, oh, what's that like? And he's like, oh, just anywhere I go, like any hotel, there's, 25 photographers like waiting outside for me no matter what I do. They're just constantly following me around, taking pictures of me and trying to get a comment. And I'm in all the tabloids and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, that sounds so uncool.
Yeah.
Because who can be on like that all the time? Like I was telling you when you were on your way over here, I was a fucking train wreck today. I mean, there's a number of reasons why that could have been possible. I've got a lot going on, having this other business and just things. But I just woke up and was just like, fuck my life. I overslept because my phone died last night because I keep it on a battery. I turn the power off in my room because I live in an incubator.
Okay.
The battery died. Right. So I had a meeting at 11. At School of Style. I mean, it's an really important meeting, about the fate of that business and all kinds of things going on. And I wake up and I'm like, I haven't heard my alarm. I thought, I don't want to wake up and open the curtains if it's 6:30 a.m. And I had no idea. And I was like, I don't know, something doesn't feel right. And so I got up and went in the other room and checked the time, and it was 10:30.
That's good.
Yeah, and it's just like, that
The
is not
universe
how I
wanted you to
roll, man.
sleep.
I have a whole routine. I meditate. I do all the things in the morning, and I think that had a lot to do with it. But so a day like today, say it had been like 1 o'clock, and I'm on my way back from that meeting, and I ran into some fans because I'm Johnny Depp, and they're like, "Oh my God, you changed my life. I love that song or that movie or whatever," and I would just be like, "Get out of my face! Like, I can't talk to you right now."
Yeah.
I don't know how they do it.
We just don't want to be too attached to so Ram Dass recently had a documentary called what was it? Becoming Nobody. Becoming Nobody.
Amazing film.
And so that's the thing, is you can, something that a Ram Dass quote is that if you can live more from this soul place, then there's no reason to do bunny ears for that. But whatever word works for you, like something deeper than your ego and your job and your watch and all that stuff, like that consciousness, like deeper consciousness. If you can live from that place as regularly as possible, like tap into that well as regularly as possible, then you're pretty darn invulnerable. But as long as you're living from the somebody place, and that's the well you're tapping from, well, your whole life could be pulled out from under you at any time. So it's a very vulnerable, anxious place to be at when you have drank your own Kool-Aid and you believe you are this somebody that you may have intentionally kind of grown yourself into by vision boarding and affirmations. And, you look in the mirror and you say, I'm somebody. I'm handsome and strong and smart. And, I'm motherfucking Luke Story, and you're like, you're God. All right. And then people reaffirm that Luke Storyness for you. And they say, wow, Luke, I love your pod. You're great, man. You're so smart. You're like, how do you get all this information, these people? You're like, yeah, fuck yeah, I am Luke Story. But as long as you do that, once again, it's like the culture can pedestalize that person and put them in a zoo in their own, in this place, like your own spiritual, mental, emotional experience. So I think it's very valuable for us to tap into like those deeper layers and not play the somebody game and have fun with it, but realize that can all go away, and life is just a bunch of electrons and protons and empty space and stories, and we don't really know what's going on here.
Yeah. We absolutely don't. And I think sometimes the days that come as curveballs, kind of like but I was able to turn it around using all the tools today. It was like the first half of the day was pretty rough. Second half has been amazing. I'm like in such a good mood, having a great time. But that didn't just happen for me just sitting on the couch going, hope I feel better. I mean, I did a bunch of shit to feel better and get back into my center, But we are very susceptible to our attachments. In terms of like building this self-identity of who we think we are and how important we are. And
it's a helpful vehicle to navigate the world, because the world just so happens that, maybe if you're like Amma or Ram Dass or like Terrence McKenna or something like that, you're like, okay, you've made a career off of just being a soul.
Yeah.
Sweet. But as far as like the tribe, we need different roles. And like, well, we need like, a treasury officer, like maybe it would be helpful if the treasury officer wasn't just meditating and like being their soul all the time. Like maybe they could pick up some textbooks and like learn about accounting.
Right. I think for me, the great leveler has been just the tremendous amount of suffering that I experienced earlier in life, that when I started to break free from much of that suffering, and on some days, all of it really, that it became so apparent to me that most of that breaking free was due to some power greater than myself and not me. And so as much sort of worldly success as I might gain in my own little niche world, or, go to a conference and have people come up to me or something like that. Again, like, trust me, I don't think I'm famous and I don't want to be, but I think like what keeps my ego in check is I'm always tethered to where I came from, and that things could be so much worse for me, man. Like, so much worse. Even just like where I live now, it was a couple miles over that way in 1991. I'm like walking around the middle of the night smoking crack with homeless people. Like, that's where I come from, And so, and I don't say that as a badge of honor. I'm not ashamed of it. I'm not proud of it. It's just I've had like a lot of weird ass experiences in life, and I've had a very long journey into the darkness, and now quite a long one into the light. But remembering where I came from in terms of just being so grateful that I've been brought to where I am now, I think it really helps me not get too full of myself, because I still feel like I won the fucking lottery. Like, not like I'm cheating and that I'm, successful in things that I'm doing, but just like I'm even more blessed than your average person, because I came from such a fucked up life to where I am now, that any day above ground is a win. So even a day where I started out the day today a little bit kind of like, I'm really not enjoying being Luke Story for this couple hours for whatever reason. Even in the middle of that, I know it's bullshit. Like, I got a $73 ticket because I was just out of it when I parked my car.
Instead of 63.
Yeah,
Irrelevant
it's
details.
73 now.
All right.
But one of the things I always kind of spiritually brag about is how parking tickets don't bother me, bro. And I swear to God, 99.9% of the time, I look at that and I go, okay, I have a choice here. I can see this as a piece of paper on a piece of glass that's on a piece of metal that's on some pieces of rubber that's on a piece of asphalt, none of which I own or mean anything. Or I can look at this and go, I'm going to die now because they're taking all my money. And 99.9% of the time, I can look at it like that piece of paper. Today, I took the thing, I was like, fuck, and I crumpled it up and threw it in my car. Fuck you. I was super pissed because I was already pissed. And so, but even in that moment, I'm like, this is all bullshit. This doesn't mean anything. I'm going to be fine. I'm just in a bad mood right now because I'm stressed out. But I know, like, even in that moment, it could be so much worse. And I also know that I have a way out because I've been shown a way out. And the way out for me largely has to do with slowing down and just praying to God, literally. I mean, there's no other way to say it. I know so many people are like God phobic or religious phobic, and that it's not cool kind of in Western culture now to be into God in a sense. But that's where my salvation comes from. It's just like, God, help me, man. You got to get me out of this. I'm willing to do my part, whatever that is. Stop, slow down, meditate. Today, my medicine was working out. I worked out like hardcore when I got home. And that's never my medicine. Maybe I did it because I knew you were coming and I know you're quite a physical guy. And I was like, I gotta get puffed up before Aaron gets here. I'm not going to have this guy put me to shame and be skinny fat, have my boobs hanging out all over camera.
That's the way fitness works. If you just slam that out in the morning up, you're good.
But I thought about my brother Cody, and he's a very kinesiologic fellow, such as you. And how he gets centered is he gets back in his body. And if he gets tweaked mentally, he'll work out and it brings him back to center. And I don't know, some reason intuitively I did that, but mainly what I did is I just prayed. And so if today was one of those days where I could have been getting too big for my britches or think I'm fucking cool and like gloating over whatever minor success I'm having in life, it's like those moments of getting my ass kicked by reality bring me back to, oh, dude, you're just lucky to be alive. You need to like chill, get right with God and keep it moving.
Yeah. People that are, I mean, it's very interesting that before we were talking about how there's just such an perhaps overabundance of loud white men talking, and sharing their ideas, and they're like essentially in many senses, at least from my angle, middle-aged white men are kind of like on Earth. They kind of are, like the kings of Earth in some capacity, and they happen to be the ones that end up committing suicide at the highest rate. So the people that like, you're like, you have the keys. Like if there's anybody that should be successful in quotations, you have no excuses. You're like 43 years old. You're a man. You're a white guy in, a wealthy place in the United States. Like that's it. That's the best hand you could have rolled, or received. And those are the people that are under, in many senses, the most amount of stress, to the point, at least to the point of like ending their lives. It's like, well, okay, so those people are also, because they're dealt that hand, it's much easier for the person that drives the Tesla and has the nice clothes and has the nice job and has all that stuff to be like, nope, this is definitely me. Yep, this is me. For sure, this is me.
Like, I did this.
Yeah,
You see, that's me. I did this, yeah.
And you'll see that with Monopoly games as well. There's research of people that did. You might have heard this, where they gave some people, had a bunch of people play Monopoly, and they rigged it so that there was specific people that like, okay, you start out with a bunch of hotels and you get to like do like extra spaces. Like you're gonna win. There's no way you're not gonna win. You're starting like halfway to home. You just need to like walk slowly to home and you'll get it. And then what those people end up doing that, start in that position, they end up starting to reason why, like, oh, well, I made this great move and I did this, angle of the dice and I made that decision and I purchased that place and like, man, like, and then this person, that started out with absolutely nothing, this is why they're losing because they did this and this. And they start taking credit for that position that they arrived at because it feels good when you are, the king of the world. But like Ram Dass says, if you put your energy into that somebodyness as opposed to putting yourself, into something else, then eventually you'll inevitably run out of juice with it. So someone that's perhaps in your position where they're walking down the street smoking crack and like, I do not like my somebody. Fuck this somebody. That person's like, okay, we should starve this somebody, I think. I need to find something else. From there, it almost puts you into a position to get to tap into deeper wells, you could say.
Yeah. Yeah, it sure does. It sure does. Well, there's one thing that strife and suffering give you if you live to tell the tale, and that's depth and compassion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, man.
That's the thing. I think for me, it's like that compassion is much easier to find for other people than myself. Which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there's a pretty strong sense. I'm realizing the Grateful Dead is still playing in the other room, which is nice. But
I liked it. It's not getting picked.
I've never
it's
had
not getting
music
picked up on the microphone.
No, I don't think the mic will hear it, but I hear it, and I'm like, oh, cool. St. Stephen.
I was like, Luke's story's got a vibe here. He's got Grateful Dead going in the background while we're recording the podcast.
But to your point of having an honest, realistic self-appraisal and not becoming too full of yourself and drinking your own Kool-Aid, as you said, I think if you've come from a place where you've had to earn it, despite whatever apparent privilege one might have from their position in life in terms of socioeconomic, race, etc., it still is because you've felt at depth like such a loser for so many years, at least speaking subjectively, that even when you start to kind of climb out of that hole, there still is that self-identity of being that same loser, and like you just tricked everyone into being successful or seeing you as successful, but if they only knew that you really don't deserve it. And that's like the real deep water of the subconscious. That's what I'm currently working on right now.
I don't know if there's that many people that
really
think
ferreting out like, I see that little fucking nugget of self-doubt that makes it more difficult for one to have that same kind of compassion and understanding and patience and love for themselves as they're able to for other people.
Yeah. Like I was thinking about this, I think this was on the drive today too, of it like the whole like imposter syndrome and like, oh my, like essentially kind of what you're just perhaps a little bit of what you're describing of, oh, I don't really deserve to be here. Like with the book, when I sold the book to the, Hachette, the publishers or Grand Central, the imprint of them, it was dramatically, it was a better deal than I was anticipating, which was great because it, led to us having more ammunition to make it like a meaningful thing, which is super exciting. But there were so many moments for me when I'm sitting at my apartment in Santa Monica and I'm like, I tricked him.
Right. Yeah.
I'm like, I don't deserve this. And I'd go in and out of like, there'd be one moment where I was like, the prophecy is moving through me. I'm a channel. Like we're going to change the world through the book. And then literally like the next hour, the next morning, I'd be like, oh my God, I am addicted to my cell phone. And I am just like, I'm not living up to the messages in the book. And I don't know how it happened, but I tricked these people. And I'd waver in and out of that. And I think that if you don't do that as a person, I almost trust somebody that has that honest kind of observation of themselves on a regular basis of like, do I deserve this? And like, maybe, I think I'm an imposter. If you come in that, I think it means at least that you're watching, and you're analyzing and you're looking. The issue comes when you analyze too closely and you miss, you don't see the what's the phrase? You miss the forest for the woods, or whatever, tree for the woods.
The forest for the trees.
The forest for the trees.
Yeah.
So when you get stuck in one lens, and that lens happens to be self-destructive, that's a real problem.
Yeah.
But I think that a good healthy dose of imposter syndrome every now and again, I think it's really great, because it means you're watching, you're paying attention. And I think I'm kind of lightened up on myself of the whole imposter syndrome. When that pops up, I'm like, eh.
Yeah. It's good to know that it's something that I think almost everyone experiences from time to time. And it's like,
not if you're a complete egomaniac, though, or maybe not. I don't know, but I wonder if there are people out there that do not, and they're just full on like, no, I am superior to everyone else, and that's a very lonely position to be in.
I think those are the people that, as children, could do no wrong, and their parents just applauded them no matter what, and they were pedestalized by their parents. It's that that's where that really like narcissism goes, on the grandiose side of things, versus someone who was like abused and shamed a lot and has had to like work themselves up to like just feeling like they deserve to breathe air with the rest of the people.
Yeah.
Which was more my experience.
And when you're in that position where you like, you get the notes out, you're like, we got to talk about this book.
Yeah. Well, I love that you're not stuck on the idea of promoting your book.
No,
I
want to know. I'm
fascinated by your approach to human movement, and I'm like, we need to cover that at some point here.
Well, one thing we can talk about at some point. It's very important that we go through regular bouts of micro trauma, because they decompress the potential of an explosive macro trauma manifesting itself. So you could potentially say like, oh, today's a better world because there's less, killing and, wars and all that stuff. It's like, okay, maybe, but, having those little disputes and like, wow, there's people rioting in the streets. Like, this is terrible. People riot. It's like, no, that riot is awesome. That means we're having this little micro struggle because there was an issue that was bubbling up. And we came to the point where like, we will not take this, and maybe someone broke some glass, or maybe a couple people died, or something terrible happened in that moment. But because that happened, it kind of course corrected enough that it didn't lead to this huge thing where the whole nation falls.
Right.
And so if you're that individual that's like, oh, you're great. No, you're great. Oh, it's great. He's never cried. And that's it's like, if you are in that position, then eventually you may lead to like a really, really rough time, because that stuff doesn't just go away. It slowly builds up. And it's the same thing getting into like the whole samskara impression stuff that we build up, and it can start to clog I heard this from the book, Untethered Soul, this term.
Oh, I love that book.
Yeah. But the term I gathered from that book was, it'll clog up your spiritual heart. And I kind of changed it in my mind, like your spiritual cardiovascular system. So each one of those impressions, those little micro traumas that you didn't address and be honest with in that moment, that ends up being like almost like plaque in that spiritual circulation system. And eventually that will end up manifesting itself into deep bouts of depression and feeling out of control and anxiety, or, even like broken heart syndrome is a real thing. You went through something that was so traumatic that you end up having actually heart issues from that thing, and you can die from it. It's like, oh, yeah, broken heart syndrome. So some emotional, mental experience that you couldn't handle, it shuts you down at a physical level, which is could be a potential segue into the book of how our physical body,
Thank you for doing my job for me. I was sitting there wrestling. Okay, how can I
we maneuver that?
Grab the steering wheel a little to the right?
Well, that's what the book's about, man.
I mean, that's spiritual bypass, right? Is not not having the wisdom or the courage, or a combination of both, to walk through the fire and just feel whatever it is that needs to be felt, and to gain whatever insights and growth are inherently there to be had, because we don't want to feel anything. And I think in the early part of my life, it was just like, number one goal, don't feel anything except pleasure. Anything other than pleasure has got to go. And you do everything you can to avoid all those other valleys of experience. And now, of course, I don't prefer to be in an unpleasurable experience like I was for a couple hours today.
It's all filter. But there's no such thing as pleasure and not pleasure. There's your perception of this experience in the moment. So
I guess that's true.
Yeah. There's no hard, fast, okay, cool, ice plunge.
Yeah,
not pleasure. Well, not for a lot of people.
Well, let's be fair, though.
Wim Hof told me he could maintain an erection in an ice bath. I think he told me ejaculate in an ice bath, but I almost feel like I repressed that.
Hopefully after his whole team got out of it.
I think he was the last one.
But I agree that the depth of your discomfort is based on framing and contextualizing. That said, there's a core difference between being kicked in the nuts by a pro soccer player and getting the best BJ of your life. I mean, there are
unless you're
extremes.
One of those Shaolin monk guy. I don't know if it's Shaolin, but the guys that get kicked in the dick as a practice.
That's the thing.
That's the thing. Yeah, look it up on YouTube. I mean, you probably look like monk kicking the dick.
There, we got something for Joe to look up.
Joe, where's the Google?
Shaolin monk dick kicking.
But so what's interesting in relation to the whole broken heart syndrome and all this stuff. I said heart syndrome kind of manifesting itself in your physical. I don't know where that goes.
Like Kennedy, broken heart.
I was channeling. I told you, it was a channel moment. It was channels we were from it. So in that position, positions in general, they all have an effect on the way that we think and the way that we feel. And so in the modern world that we happen to inhabit is one of sitting on chairs a lot. Nothing, again, it's not a moralistic good, bad thing. It just happens to be the way that it is. And so you are, good. Joe pulled up, see? That fast. We got to get on the video.
Hey, hand me that laptop, Joe. I want to put it on the YouTube video.
Yeah, you gotta let him know.
Oh my God, dude. He's doing it to himself.
That's what I'm saying.
He's full-fisted punching his own self in the nutties.
That's
YouTube fans can see that. Yeah, and for those on my camera, it's a real thing.
It's real talk. It's real talk.
Every time Aaron comes over, I learn the strangest things. This guy's, oh my God, look at this.
This is the video that I'm familiar with as well, actually.
He has you just have to watch the YouTube video, but we'll put
it's powerful.
We'll put it in the show notes.
Powerful content.
We'll put it in the show notes. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, so it's very fascinating. So that's interesting. That's an example of like pleasure.
And they're
is
not
something
wearing a cup or anything?
No.
Oh God, a swift kick to the nards. Then homeboy had like one of these
log.
Yeah, a log, like on a pole vault kind of mechanism. I mean, it's just.
So it's very interesting how our physical world happens to form us into a position where our hips are shaped kind of like what like a dog would do if you're about to hit him with a newspaper or something. Their pelvis kind of wraps under and they kind of roll forward like that. And then we're looking at our phones a lot, which there's a lot of different conversations, the way that sight affects the way that we think and feel and emotions and, affects us at a cellular level. And our shoulders, oftentimes, maybe we're driving a car, or we're leaning forward on a computer, hunching forward, looking into the screen. That forms us into a position that if you were to remove all of that technology or the steering wheel or what have you, which a photographer has done, we could pull that up as well. It's very interesting. I actually would highly recommend it. Or a photographer, he removed people's cell phones from their hands. He photoshopped them out. They had like couples, laying in bed with their cell phone and just various different images of it. Every single person looks really sad. That's not to say that you can't look at your phone from a position that like you feel strong, confident, creative, and happy and all that stuff. But for the most part, when we're absent-mindedly staring into technology, if you were to take away that phone and have some hunter-gatherer, ancestor, whatever, look at that person, they'd be like, oh, it's like a sick animal. Like what's you're sad or so like how can I help you? What's going on? They're like, no, I'm just checking my Uber. I'm just waiting for the thing, or checking my messages. And
damn, that's funny. Yeah, and I guess unless it's like a funny cat video or something.
Right. Yeah.
I pretty much always would have like a scowl on my face because
eyes down.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
Yeah. And so in that position, I think it's very fascinating. I'm not saying 100% this is the thing, but I do think it's an interesting thing to ponder on, and in my opinion, it would be valuable for it to be a more prominent conversation, is the mechanical conversation around emotions. In this case, like depression being the number one leading cause of disability on Earth. It's a really big deal. Like it's like, whoa, shit.
Because people are too depressed to get up and go get a quart of milk.
Yeah, not feeling good.
They're disabled.
Yeah, I feel disconnected. I'm lonely. I just feel morose. I just don't feel good. And so in that postural position that we're practicing throughout the day, I'm not saying this is the only thing, but I think there's a lot of different things that you cover on this podcast with regularity. The thing that I see as a predominant deficit is the movement conversation, the way we feel, not just for depression, but also for creativity and optimism and feeling confident and feeling strong and feeling in control and feeling on purpose. So there's I reference research from San Francisco State University, where they had two different groups of individuals or students go into different postures and then have them reflect on different memories from those different postures. And what they found was that people in that kind of cell phone hunched over position, in the book we call it I break down 5 postural archetypes and relate their personalities to each one. And so that would be the mopey archetype. When they're in that mopey archetype, it's easier for them to access more depressive memories, because we've anchored that position to Luke feels this way when he goes into this postural pattern. Think when you play a certain song that will invoke certain memories. Before doing a podcast with somebody you care about, you might hype yourself up, and you have like, cool, when I hear that sound, I feel this way because I've anchored that sound to make me feel this way through practice and repetition. When I move my body this way through practice and repetition, I've anchored myself that this means this. So when I go, oh, you're breaking up with me? Oh, I'm fired? Oh, I go, oh. My shoulders roll forward, my head goes in forward head posture, maybe my eyes look down, and then throw a cell phone in front of my face and boom, just checking my messages. And so that we're continually anchoring these positions. And, I think it's a worthy life path to start to kind of pay attention to what is the meaning and expression of all of these postural patterns that I make throughout the day. That's what the book's about. In large part, there's other things too.
Well, it's interesting that the way you feel in the posture position of your body goes both ways, right? It's like when you are having, say, a negative emotional experience, or you're caught in negative thought loops, your posture is going to reflect that, and you're going to contract or collapse or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And likewise, and whenever I'm around you, you just like the way you hold yourself physically is so fluid but stable. It always makes me have better posture.
Cool.
But when I'm conscious of how I'm holding myself physically, that affects my mood also. It's like in the Tony Robbins events. I mean, he obviously uses physicality so much as a way to anchor in different ideas and things like
Show
that.
me your move.
Yeah, but make it move.
Make it move.
Make it move.
Make it move.
But
that's exactly what I'm describing, by the way.
But one of the things, aside from the fist bumping and the dancing stuff, but one of his things that's so brilliant, and I'm like many Tony Robbins things, it's probably not his thing, but just cool nuggets he picked up along the path, but is even in your diaphragm, like a 1/2 inch tilt of your diaphragm down collapse versus up and erect changes your whole physiology.
Yeah.
It's crazy. And so
he's actually dare I say, a little off on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, which is interesting. That was something that I was doing. So he's suggesting people,
the thing I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Okay.
Yeah. I went to the UPW thing recently, and I thought that was fascinating. And you can see that in any person's well, I'll just talk about that position in particular. So what he's suggesting for people to do is flare their ribs, which puts you in an inherently unstable position if you do want to like load weight through your spine, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So when you do flare your ribs back up like that, and he's like, it's just the difference between just a centimeter more. Really what would be wise would be for people to actually do, this instead. Is bring your hands along your lower ribs and just blow all of your air out. Right now you can do it. And when you do that, you'll feel your ribs kind of start to close down a little bit. Almost as like, think of your abdomen almost like a cylinder. In the book, we use analogy of like a Coke bottle. or any kind of soda pop bottle. If you put a bend in that bottle and then you put pressure on the bottle, it'll collapse on that bend. So ideally what we can do with our spine is we can kind of take those bends out. And so that way we can load weight from our head all the way down into our hips and down into our feet stably. But what so many people do is they try to hide instability that they have somewhere. I'm describing myself right now. And like say their shoulders are too closed forward, or their head stuck forward, or their spine's in that hyperkyphosis. And instead of doing the work to really unwind those patterns from the feet up, they just make your move. Pull the shoulders back, and we just stuff all those patterns into the low back. So now all of a sudden I'm in this hyperlordotic position, and I'm putting myself, in a place that I'm more at risk for various different spinal issues. So it's kind of similar to like, not addressing those micro traumas like we were describing before. It's like we need to go in and actually say, no, like, how are your feet? What's the position of your feet before you make your move? What's the alignment of your knees and your feet? What's the alignment of your pelvis on top of that? Okay, now let's talk about your spinal mechanics. Okay, where's your pelvis in relation to your diaphragm? Okay, that's one layer. Now, where's your diaphragm in relation to it's called your thoracic inlet, like where your head pops out of your shoulders. Okay, now where's the top of your head? Fancy unnecessary term is called the tentorium cerebelli, which is like it's kind of almost like a diaphragm that's diaphragm being connective tissue that's going across the body. So that's essentially like where your brain rests on, essentially. So you want to stack your body. I'm going into maybe excessive detail right now. I apologize. But you want to stack all of those layers from head to shoulders to respiratory diaphragm to pelvic floor to knees to feet. Now we're talking. From there, it's like, okay, like make your move. But if you just make your move and you just slam all of that stuff of like this, all the issues that we were talking about with the shoulders and the head, and we just stuff that down in the lower back, it's not going to just go away. So we can start to through gaining a little bit more interest in the body by doing really simple things. By spending more time, like one of the chapters in the book is about the value of just getting up and down from the ground with regularity. It's like, oh my God, groundbreaking stuff. Only what we've been doing since the beginning of humanity, and like well before Homo sapiens, like we've been up and down off of the ground regularly throughout the day. It was only since Egyptian times that like royalty got a chair with like gold and it's like okay, cool, like you're above us, like and all the peasants will sit on the ground below you.
You just reminded me of Borat. I have a chair. You go here. You do this. I have a chair.
Totally. No, exactly. So those, the kings and the royalty are the people that get sick. They are the vulnerable ones. Back to pedestalizing Brad Pitt and Johnny Depp. Like they are actually the ones that are under the most stress. It's very fascinating, but like it's like almost like a trick from like, I don't know, God or universe or something. That's the way it works. And so if we can go back into those roots of just like, okay, when you're checking your Instagram notifications or your emails, or maybe you're eating breakfast, maybe what if we got like a low coffee table and we got some Moroccan poofs or cushions or, foam roller or yoga blocks. And I just did what I was going to pay a yoga teacher $25 to tell me to do. What if I just do that for breakfast? And I just slowly titrate and still those little drops of what I would do and pay a personal trainer $150 to tell me to do. What if I just integrate that in my daily life? If you start to do that, then all of a sudden, you're slowly bringing back those practices that are actually tuning mechanisms for your biology that have been on board. You think of all those positions almost like when you shut your computer down and it goes through and kind of, cleans out old files and does all that stuff. And you turn it back on, it's like, ready to go, rebooted. That's your rest practice. So if your rest practice is one of sitting in that same hunch over position that you've been all day, and then you get the phone out and you're just chilling and you have a beer or whatever, it's not a full, robust rest practice. So we can shine the lens the same way we do on our fitness practice. It would be very wise for us to shine that lens on the other side of the coin, which is the rest practice. Positions of repose, we call them in the book.
I think what's really interesting about the way you approach the body and fitness in general is turning your everyday life into a gym, making your life a fitness practice. as you just described. I think that what's happened as we've devolved really is that because it's, agricultural revolution, industrial revolution, etc., life's become more convenient, so it's not necessary to work for our calories in the same way that we used to have to when we had to go hunt and gather. We became sedentary because we figured out, I'll just get some land, irrigate that shit, get some seeds, and grow my food right here and sit on my ass, right?
Yep.
And so coming out of that to where we are now, it's not necessary for many of us to move all that much in order to still get the things that we want in life, myself included. And so now it seems as though we've gotten so far away from our ancestral roots as hunter-gatherers and people that move within the landscape of nature that now we've created these special buildings called gyms with all the special equipment to mimic what we would be doing if we were natural people living in the wild, right? And not like I want to go back to living in the wild. I like my chair. I have a chair.
And it's interesting.
But, I don't like working out because it's like a thing I have to go do in a horribly lit building with music that fucking sucks and it smells like off-gassing plastic. When I walk by a gym, I get nauseous.
Yeah. Well, so the best workout that you can possibly get, so says science, in the form of like NASA research. There's a woman that we referenced in the book called Joan Vernikos, that she's the I believe her title is life sciences expert of I might have messed the title up, but she was working with astronauts and their health for 40 years and observing the impact of taking the astronauts out of gravity. And what the effect is, they go through this like rapid aging process where all of a sudden, you take away that stress, in quotations, of gravity, which is a healing force that keeps us together, and allows our body to function. You take that stress off of the body, all of a sudden, muscle turns to fat, cognitive function declines, blood pressure, like everything kind of goes, and it's like, oh wow, things are kind of going haywire here. It's like, then you get back, you're gone for 6 months, but you've like aged 20 years. It's like, whoa, wild. But what they found was the people that would backload or front load their workouts while they're in space would have significantly less benefit from that workout than the ones that would titrate, to use that same word again, those workouts throughout the day. So if they did, a 10-minute workout here and a 5-minute here and a 15 here throughout the day, those people would have significantly less of deleterious effects from that loss of gravity or absence of gravity.
Oh, interesting.
And so there's another researcher called James Levine that is he's like the world leading expert on sedentary lifestyle. And
I thought I was.
Yeah, exactly. That's good. That's clever. And so he has a thing called NEAT, which is non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And so non-exercise, the shit that you're doing while you're not actually at the gym moving dumbbells, activity, and then thermogenesis, like you're burning calories. And when you're doing those that NEAT, you can be burning up to 2,000 calories more than someone that has more of like a sedentary type life, just from being the person that does happen to maybe, check their emails on the ground, or does happen to maybe put their cell phone in another room so that when they need to use it, they get up, walk out, grab it, check it, put it back. Or maybe they put one trash can in like one spot so that it forces a few extra steps. Or maybe they do walking meetings. That we have so much of this, free energy just sitting on the table that we just kind of, forget about throughout the day because we kind of, we're mired by convenience. So if you can start to find joy in inconvenience, which is kind of an interesting step. There's the restaurateur guy that made Momofuku. Is that what the restaurant's called? Momofuku?
I don't know.
New York, super famous restaurant. I forget the guy's name. You can look it up, Joe. Yeah. He said, what is it? You do things this is like paraphrase. He said, do things the long, hard, stupid way. Like that's how they cook. Like, no, like we do things the long, hard, stupid way. We're like, and then it's like this huge chain and people love the food because like, yeah, it's like, wow, like they go into the details and they find joy in that, like the craft. And so you can start to take that same concept and idea of, making that really brilliant food and take that into the way that you take a poop or check your email. Like, okay, cool. Like I'm gonna enjoy this inconvenience.
I just started thinking of all the inconvenient ways I could take a poop.
Yeah.
And
well, one would be putting your feet up on like a squatty potty or something like that. That's inconvenient.
Got
but
that
it
far.
elongates your rectum and allows the poop chute to actually open up for you to have a good proper defecation.
Shout out to Squatty Potty, lukestory.com/store if you want to.
Yeah, or any bench,
if you want to take natural deuces.
Yeah.
And
put your feet on your dog.
So I know you. I know my brother Cody. We hang out from time to time. I observe how you move. Every time I see you, I'm like, hey, how do I do this thing or that thing? You show me some physical movements that are going to improve my posture, life, physicality in general. If I like hear you talking right now and I go, yeah, man, I want to turn my lifestyle into a gym and not be sedentary 90% of the day, then go to the gym for an hour, which is totally weird if you think about it from a zoomed out perspective.
Yeah.
Would there be practices in your book that are like, hey, when you're working on your computer, how about do it this way? Hey, sitting there drinking your smoothie, do it this way. I mean, do you go into instructional,
absolutely,
how to live your life like more of a wild animal? Rather than,
we describe the book as like a Western mechanics meets Eastern philosophy, which is kind of like what this conversation's been. Now I think about it, it's like half was just all out there metaphysics.
I hope people,
like, these people are they're definitely imbibed some form of plant medicine before starting this podcast, and now we're talking about the book.
People hung in for the first 45 minutes, and those that are still hearing my voice obviously did. But the title is probably going to be like "How to Move Like a Blah Blah Blah," or
what
like
are they
fitness. Yeah, and they're going to be like, "Wait, what?" Yeah.
Who is this somebody you speak
I
of?
want to talk about. It's so funny because I told Joe earlier. I was like, "Yeah, I've interviewed Aaron before. I mean, we're going to be talking about his book. It's going to be pretty cut and dried. It'll be an hour." And now I'm like, "Well, okay."
Oh yeah.
I don't care. It's just funny how I always think that
that's good.
They're going to be as long as they're going to be.
Yeah.
But you're a super fit guy. You're one of those guys like fucking Aubrey and Ben Greenfield, all you fucking guys with abs, fuckers, that I look at on Instagram, and I look at your picture of you at the Muscle Beach, and then I look down at my fat stomach, and I just go, fuck my life.
Yeah.
And then Ben comes over the other day, and it was like 9 a.m. or something. We're recording. I was like, hey, how's it going? He's like, oh, pretty good, man. I just went and worked out for 4 hours, I got up at 3 and worked out for 4 hours. Now I'm here feeling good. And then I go, I don't want to work that hard. I want to look good because my ego, I want to take my shirt off on Instagram and have other fat guys like look at me and think I'm awesome and be jealous of me. But I actually don't want to wake up at 6 or 5 and like work out for 4 hours. Like I hate it, So I'm always in this kind of struggle of, I don't know how this is going to be a question. Just be patient with me, Aaron and listeners. Yeah. But I don't know if it's because I'm 49, about to hit 50, or if it's because I have friends like you that are super fit. And I go like, I know I have it in my DNA and basic bone structure. I mean, an ectomorph, I'm never going to be a linebacker, but I could be ripped if I worked hard enough and was smart enough about it and ate right, even at 49, right? I could be pretty fit. And
you're actually in quite excellent shape. I hope people listening to this that you're being quite hard on yourself.
We're going to talk about body dysmorphia.
Yeah, body dysmorphia. I hope is where this is going.
That,
you do.
Actually. Oh, shit. Another fucking disorder ayahuasca's going to show me. Fuck. But my question I think that I'm trying to get to is this, is like, okay, you have the I love myself. I want to take care of myself. And when I look in the mirror and I feel like my body and the shape that I'm in reflects me caring about myself to eat healthy foods and to move my body enough and sweat enough that I'm fit for my body type. And me, as I said, I'm an ectomorph. I know like the potential of like what I could look like super fit. Part of that is like respecting the vessel that creation or God has given you. Man, I've been given this vehicle for my soul to go have this human material experience. I really want to take care of this thing. And how it looks is a reflection of how well I'm taking care of it. I think on the not pathological side and on the healthy side, that makes sense. I struggle with where does that end and where does I'm only lovable and worthy if my body looks like Mr. Fitness, my buddy, or the cover of Men's Health magazine, or
Yeah.
whomever, and like comparing myself to other people that are physically fit. And I know from working in the fashion industry that women really struggle with this a lot too, because of, you have this sort of archetype of what a hot girl is. And if you don't look like your girl on the cover of a magazine, then you're not attractive. And there's this whole thing. So I guess my question is like, where does just self-care, self-love end, and where does like egoic motivation begin? Because sometimes I'll find myself being motivated because I want other people to see my body in a certain way, not because I just want to take care of myself.
Yeah.
And when I see that egoic motive, I'm like, meh, I'm going to eat some ice cream and not move much today because that's all ego bullshit. I'm not my body. And who cares what it looks like, because it's about my soul, not my body. So
you kind of are your body too.
There's probably not even a question. There's not a question there. I just want to hear
stuff.
I want to hear you rant on like what it's like to be a fit guy that feels really confident, showing yourself on social media, and
but just because a
being
person
all
has
muscular and awesome.
Oftentimes you can almost. So I was listening to a thing with the guy that did the Cove documentary, the dolphins, the whole the Cove, and he was saying when he went over there, the government's like, okay, here's the map of where you can go. He's like, okay, cool, sweet, thanks for the map, I really appreciate that. So essentially what they did was the map, the inverse of what was on the map was his map now. So what's not shown on the map is where I need to go, because where you don't want me to go is where I'm going to go, because that's all the shit that I need to see. So oftentimes you can almost have a similar experience with a person that does have abs and does put so much focus into their body. And, it's like you look at them and they're just like this rigid, contracted, strong, veiny, oily slab of meat thing. They want the world to see that, and because perhaps underneath that, oftentimes it's not saying this is just the way that it is. With anything, it's not what you do, it's why you do it. But someone that's continually in a contracted, tense state, one could ask the question, what are you protecting against? What are you contracting your abs so tight for? Like, because I've done manual therapy and rolfing and different, visceral manipulation and different forms of body work for the origin of that was about 12 years ago. And so I've touched a lot of bellies in that time. And a belly that is continually in a state of contraction is protecting against something. Like your belly should have suppleness to it. And we were talking about this with, and it should be able to contract. It needs to be able to span both ends of the spectrum.
I think mine's just supple.
So and again, this is all Shiva Shakti, masculine, feminine, yin yang. So you could use a little bit of more of that like masculine structure part. You could, swing a sledgehammer against some tires or whatever, and some of that, and hang out with Aubrey and Kyle and all like those guys, and like it would probably be good for you. Be my guess. Good's a relative word, but one could ask the question, what is this physical animal protecting against? What is this? What's like the emotional driver of always needing to? Okay, cool. You're taking a show everybody that I'm strong. And within that, for me, I come from body dysmorphia without a doubt. I just had like the inverse of what is more common, where I thought that I was always, too skinny, and so I never felt comfortable in my skin. And so I would be slamming protein shakes and creatine and gluten, like all the enes, like every 2 hours. If I was not consuming food every 2 hours, I had this belief that my body was, cannibalizing itself, and I was going to be a small piece of shit that won't be loved. And so within that, it's like there's a lot of different forms of body dysmorphia, I would say, or just insecurity or not feeling at home in yourself. And there's certain flavors of that are more socially acceptable than others, and so then those flavors get projected onto media and magazines and celebrity and all that stuff. And then that gets dripped back in to, create more complexes with people. But, we were talking about before with Cookie, your dog, like you want, a woman in this case we were talking about, like you don't want a woman that's like all jacked and like you want someone that you can like cuddle with, want someone that's compassionate. You want someone that's nurturing.
You're speaking like from our conversation earlier.
You personally, and me too.
Yeah.
But that's exactly what we were talking about. So the physical form which is an outward projection or manifestation of something subtler, something emotional, or environmental, or maybe ancestral or whatever, manifests itself in the quality of that person's tissue. But you, in your form, I would suggest you probably are more approachable by more people, and compassion and nurturing and all of those things that you might not prize as much because you want to be like jacked and tan and Vin Diesel when you look in the mirror, apparently, from what you're saying.
Yeah. There's a part of me that does, and I'm trying to figure out what part that is.
Yeah. But the fact of the matter is, I think there's value in having suppleness, and I think there's value in not always having rock hard abs all the time and shredded quads, and a lot of those people with those rock hard abs and shredded quads and, all that stuff, they're wearing that biological costume to protect something, vulnerable underneath all of that. I'm not talking about anybody else other than myself right now. Like, that's exactly where I come from.
Well, and in my former career, I mean, it was all about, not even the actual physical body, but the adornment of that physical body, and using clothes as almost smoke and mirrors to make people look better than they actually look, or to make them marketable. You
do that with your tissue.
Yeah. So it's like you learn as a stylist. I could identify someone's body type and know whether structured clothing or loose-fitting clothing, drapey clothing is going to work on them. Like you'd be so easy to dress because you have muscle tone and you have bone structure that would allow clothes to drape. You don't need the clothing to prop you up. But if you get someone that's a little smushier, you need to put them in clothing that's structured. And I used to think about
shoulder pads are always funny.
Yeah.
Like, are you wearing shoulder pads?
It's a thing.
Do you?
Well, this is what I used to.
You're like tricking us? What is this?
It is. Well, that's the thing. I mean, dude, like push-up bras, everything. It's all smoke and mirrors. But I used to trip on this. Okay, so you have like this unrealistic expectation, in a sense, of what beauty is or what attractiveness is in the media, right? So in the entertainment industry, fashion industry, you have the man that's got broad shoulders and a muscular upper body, and then a tiny waist, kind of that V shape, right? Mm-hmm. And then you have, generally speaking, more of an hourglass, curvy woman, big bust, small waist, bigger hips, kind of thing. And so that's the shape that you're always trying to mimic as a stylist, whether or not that person is actually shaped like that or not. So you might have a woman who has a very straight up and down body with no curves whatsoever. But if you're a good stylist, you know how to make her look like an hourglass, even though she's really not, right? And so I used to sort of contemplate why those standards are upheld and why we consider those two shapes, generally speaking, with males and females, to be the most attractive. And I ended up coming across, and I'm sure this isn't a huge revelation, it doesn't make me a genius, but it's just based upon mateability, right? Just going back to our evolution, that a man with a shape like you've got in that V is going to be a good protector, provider. And so female sees that shape across the prairie and goes, that's a viable husband or mate right there to protect offspring and protect us from predation. And
depends where they are in their cycle.
And get food. Okay, let me just get through with my rant, and then I want you.
Sorry.
And then you, as the caveman hunter-gatherer, see big boobs, big butt, small waist. You see, can carry baby and nurse baby, produce milk, and so you want that. So my point is that it doesn't make someone a bad person that they're attracted to that general archetype, and it doesn't make the magazine industry assholes because they're marketing that. I think, generally speaking, that humans are attracted to those two shapes because they're biologically viable in terms of procreation and the perpetuation of the species.
Yeah.
Then it turns into having psychologically a relationship with yourself where you learn to love yourself and accept yourself, even though you might not have one of those shapes inherently that are popularized in the media and on the magazines, and that might be more considered a viable mate by the opposite, or in some cases the same sex, as it were.
Yeah. Well, so the one thing is that's just interesting and random when I was interrupting you is it depends on where a woman's at in her cycle.
What's
who she'll be attracted to.
Okay.
So when she's ovulating and in a place where she's like, okay, I want to like get pregnant. I want the D. Right now I want to have wild, ridiculous. I want to find a caveman. And I just want to just take me. But when they're not in that phase, there will end up being more attracted to the person that honestly falls more into like the type that you're describing as yourself, which I think you're kind of a mix between the two. But you're like, they'd be finding a person that's like, oh, he seems like supportive and he seems like loving and nurturing and caring. And he's probably not banging 9 girls right now while he's like, so it's a sliding scale. It fluctuates. There's no one thing.
Right.
Everything is relative. And everything that I was saying in relation to like, all of my own body dysmorphia growing up, which there's still probably a little bit in there, I would imagine a bit, I think. But first come from a place. It's not what you do, it's why you do it. So first we need to figure out how to reverse engineer the human organism to get to a point of compassion and love. And so if you are so wound up in muscles and fancy cars and all those somebodynesses that you can, hang your hat on, it's like I was watching a person the other day and he was like, it looked like Drake or something. I don't know. It wasn't Drake, but it looked like he had like the perfect cut beard thing and he was driving like a Bentley or a Rolls Royce or something like that. And it's like, it very obviously stood out, of all the cars, like, wow, it stood out. One could look at that car and be like, oh man, like, wow, like who's that? Like I want to be in that person's life, and then the thought that popped up into my mind for whatever reason was like, it might not make sense, but the first thing that was like, oh, it's worse than we thought. With that person, it's like if you're so entrenched in all of those things, and maybe not, he could have been just an amazing person, but I'm just creating the story. But it's like when you need to reach out for it's like, okay, the Tesla's not enough. I need a Bentley. Like, no, Bentley, I don't need a Rolls. It's like, do at the root layer, are you from a place where you could love yourself in, a Prius or a Civic or anything? And so first, if you're so deeply entrenched in all those things, it's worse than we thought. It means like, oh, there's going to be way more work to do to unwind the clock back to that point where he can get to a root of like, no, I just love me for me. You can take it or leave it. And then from there, fuck yeah, let's get muscles and do steroids. Fuck it. Whatever you want. Like if you come from that root layer, then we're good.
Do you know where to get any of those? I'm just saying. But
seriously.
I've managed to procure every other substance that's borderline legal just from having a podcast.
Steroids work.
Here's what I always thought these actors, when they go do Thor and shit, I was like, damn, what workouts that guy doing? And then anytime I talk to someone, they're like, bro, they're doing roids. Like, get real.
And I think if you're being paid millions of dollars for a role in a thing,
take one for the team.
Do the juice. I get it. Whatever. No
do the
deal.
Juice.
Not that I do or do not condone, but I get it. But if you're just a dude working out at Gold's and you just want more chicks, or whatever, I don't think it's the time to sacrifice. But who am I to say to do whatever you want?
This brings me back to myself. Shocker. Because this show is really just, after all, an exploration of my life.
That's great.
No, it kind of is in a way, but with the physically fit thing and turning 50 and kind of as an experiment, just going, I wonder if I could be like an in shape guy. Like, I wonder if that's just possible within my DNA code, and what would that take? He's got a Wolverine up.
Nice.
Thanks, Joe. Perfect.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well
Could I
done.
look like Wolverine?
Yeah.
You know what it is like all these years, dude, I've been really focused on becoming nobody and disidentifying from mind, from ego, from my personality, my career, the car I drive, the clothes I wear, and getting to work on my soul and what kind of person I am and character and how I help people and how I contribute to the world, and not judging myself and valuing myself based on something that's not technically me, like my body, right? And so I sort of just like, I don't even, why would I want to be in shape? Like, who cares? I'm not my body. Kind of, I'll just meditate myself into bliss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no.
So I was kind of on that spectrum. And I think now, partially because I'm really working within the health industry now and feeling like I can't be that guy. Like I remember when David Wolf was like the biggest guy in like the health scene. And then, he'd get all this shit online because he wasn't in that great of shape, and I was like, oh shit. If I start getting David Wolf popular, I better like do some crunches every once in a while.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to get trolled that heavily. But it's also just like, it's the industry that I'm in, and also not wanting to totally discount my physicality because I'm Mr. Spiritual and I'm more interested in living a life as a monk. And so I guess I'm trying to find that balance now, but I want to get back to that body dysmorphia thing. Cause I caught myself a couple days ago when I had Ben Greenfield come over to the house and we did it's an amazing show. It's coming out on Christmas Eve. So it'll be out before the one we're doing right now. And it's like a 2-hour documentary film that we did of him going through my whole house, and we just geek out on all the shit. I mean, it's going to be really fun, or was really fun, because it will have happened after this chronologically. But anyway, I was going through some of the footage that my editor Colin sent me, and there was this one part I was kind of nervous about. And again, this is Ben Greenfield, who's like a fitness expert. Dude has like 3% body fat. I mean, he's ripped like a maniac. And we go out and we do an ice bath. And so there's Ben with his shirt off, just looking like, the Incredible Hulk. And then, I'm going to get in the ice bath, so I take my shirt off. And then I'm looking at the footage of me and Ben standing there talking, and I got my moobs like hanging down in a fucking A cup. And I'm standing next to Ben, and I watched that video, and literally I had the thought, I was like, oh, I got to call Colin and see if he can zoom in or something. I was like, can we reframe this? This is going on YouTube. I can't be seen like this alone, let alone next to Ben Greenfield. Yeah. And I could just see, my mind imagine all the troll comments from his followers that are like, this guy thinks he's a biohacker. He looks pregnant, bro. And then I got into this like self-shaming body dysmorphia thing and got back into, I am my body, and my worth and value as a person is based on like the percentage of body fat that I have and how I think people are going to perceive me or not on the imaginary internet.
Yeah.
And I was like, God fucking damn it, I'm still trapped. I still have an attachment to what people think.
Yeah.
Now, I'm still going to put it out. I'm not going to do any CGI, although if it was cheap, I probably would. And it's just whatever. I got over it, but there was still that thing. And then there's still the thing when getting out of the shower and walk by the mirror and like, rather than looking myself in the eyes going, dude, you help a lot of people. You're fairly smart and doing cool shit in the world. You fucking rule, Luke. When I walk by the mirror, Aaron, I swear to God, and I'm just going to be real here. I don't know where I picked up this habit, but I literally look down at my stomach and I go, you're fat as fuck. You got to do something about that. And then the next thought is like, yeah, but I'm trying, like nothing happens. What the fuck? What do? You got to interview Aaron, find out how to fix this.
Well,
but I think that's body dysmorphia, where it's like caring too much and also seeing things worse than they actually are. Like for a 49-year-old, I'm in okay shape. Like I know many people are probably, technically speaking, in worse shape, although that is, of course, subjective.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think I'm just sharing with you as a friend, man.
No, I appreciate it,
man. It's just, I think I'm not the only fucking dude or woman or whomever that struggles with this kind of like body image stuff. And I swear to God, I never thought I was one of those people.
Well, so there's like
until I started working on it and not just being like, I just meditate. I don't give a shit if I have, if I'm in shape or not.
Yeah. So I think there's like a couple things. One, that is a habitual thought. One, the thought has some degree of value, I think. Like when you create anything that you have in your world, every aspect of this room, the shirt that you're wearing, the headphones, the podcast, the cover, you recently changed the cover, all that stuff started off with this idea, and then it crystallized into you writing it down. And then, from there you called somebody, and then you hired, and then, it's all started as you forming that material world inside of your mind. And if you have this, this image for yourself, and you look in the mirror, you say, it doesn't quite fit the image. Dang it. Like it doesn't fit. Like I think like, I get that. I don't think there's anything wrong with it to a degree. Unless you become obsessed with that habitual thought of, I am not enough, or whatever the thing is. And so then what happens is, you get to the point where, okay, cool, you did everything you needed to do to cut. I mean, you know all this. You already know what I'm about to say, which I think most people probably know what I'm about to say. But, you cut all that weight off. And then the next thing is like, dude, my fucking facial hair is getting gray. This is not okay. Fuck, okay, I gotta make some call. Okay, I die. Okay, is this okay? Okay, cool. But okay, now I think this makes me look kind of cheesy. I look, what am I trying to prove? And you just live your life in these patterns over. It's like there's no getting out of it. So cool, you cut the thing, but that will, because it's coming from a root of lack of acceptance and lack of self-love and lack of belonging and maybe fear of abandonment because of whatever thing. I'm not putting any of this on you, just these are kind of more things that relate to me. That until we kind of go behind the hood and address some of those things, I think it's just going to be like, whack-a-mole, pow, 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 pow. And so then how long, it's like a fool that persists in their folly eventually becomes wise. How long can we whack these fucking moles before we're like, God damn it, they're just going to pop up someplace else. And hopefully along the way, maybe you got some abs and you got hot girlfriend or something like that, and you had some good parties or whatever, and you got to look back and have some Polaroids and have a good time. But did any of it make you happy? Like that's the big thing. Is like in the end, is Ben Greenfield any happier than you? And I don't care, but like that's the ultimate question. When you're on your deathbed, did I love to my fullest capacity, including myself? And in the end, you're like, wow, you won't be like, were my abs sick? To get the right angle with the right gradient and the light, so it was like really popped and I got like enough likes. There's 0% chance you will give a fuck about that.
I mean, most of the time there's not already. I think what it is like I'm wanting to give a fuck a little more, and then when I do, I'm like, oh wait, maybe I just should go back to not caring at all because.
Right. Well, hold on, I'm not done.
Yeah.
So within that, so that's just one chapter.
Yeah.
Right. So that's okay. We got to figure that out.
Yeah.
Because if we don't, whack-a-mole going to keep happening.
Yeah, the underlying self-worth issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Inferiority, shame-based expression of
whatever maybe call it what you will. And then, so then on top of that, I have resistance around people talking about, and I get this, and I've like felt this before as well, but like, kind of like disregarding the meat body. And like, I'm not my body. It's like, no, you kind of are, bitch. Like your skin and your pupils dilating and like your the quality of food that you put into your mouth relates into, like, you see that in your pores. You see that in your connective tissue, and your postural patterns. Like, they are all representations of the way that you feel in that moment. When you went and you got that ticket for $73, you were like, you were angry. Well, your body expressed anger by, in that case, your pupils adjusted and your shoulders adjusted and your hands clenched up, and you were your body in that moment. And so if we just disregard the body entirely, we miss out on this whole plethora of tools that we can access to kind of augment this, this human experience. So if your shoulders are chronically jacked up to your ears, that may be putting your body into a chronic stress state. If you're in a chronic stress state, perhaps that's sending an indication deeper that, oh man, like winter's coming. Like, we should pack on some fat. Because I'm under stress right now. Like, any calories I get, we got to put them on. And so instead of it looking like, dude, I keep on doing these fucking push-ups, I'm running laps, and I'm getting fatter. Meanwhile, I'm stuck in my cell phone. I'm stressed out about my job. I don't feel like my life's on purpose. And there's all these other layers that are kind of out of control. But oh man, I'm fucking doing these crunches, man. And until we address those other layers, it's going to be potentially, a little bit challenging for us to get back into relationship with this physical form. Because in many senses, you are your body. Your body's a chapter book. So when you look at someone's physical postural patterns and feel their tissue and have a conversation with them and hear the tone of their voice, hear the pacing of their language, the accent of their language, all of that stuff. Oh, he walks a certain way. Oh, he uses, he goes like this. He bobs his head like this when he talks. It's like, oh, you spent time in India. Cool. How was that? Oh, okay, great. Like that was, you picked that up, you carried in your form. That's one chapter, so it's like, yeah, you are your body and you're not, but you don't want to just discredit it entirely. You want to gain a relationship with it. And, you also want to get your thoughts under control.
I dig it. What I hear in that is balance.
Yep.
That it's a balance. It's not all one way or another. And so you might walk by in the mirror and observe that thought that says you're less worthy now because you have 2 or 3 more inches of fat in your abdomen than you think should be there because you have some idea of what that should look like or feel like. Okay, noted. That's not true. That's bullshit. And maybe I could work out and not pound a pint of ice cream at 12:30 right before I go to sleep, which I do from time to time. Probably is not helping the abdomen much. Right? So it's like that self-awareness and finding balance. And I think what you said too about just really getting down to the root issue of why one doesn't feel worthy. And that, I think, is one of the big motivators that gets people caught up in the superficiality of I am my car, I am my title, I am my bank account, I am my clothes, my house, my body, my popularity, my social media following, all that kind of stuff. Like when you do get attached to those things, it's because of that underlying wound and that underlying sense that you're not enough, that you're not lovable. And so you get caught up in the significant value that I have to be important, I have to be significant in order to get what I want. When you can just build some awareness around that and go straight to love, which is what your motivation is to get significance, is to get love and connection. Correct. Anyway. So how about if we prioritize love and connection, and then significance will fall down further the chain of values. Yeah,
you end up spending your life, I'm going to say this, but you spend your life doing, isolating yourself and doing all these things to, pushing away the people that love you in order to get the money and get the car and get the status and get the followers and get all that stuff so that people will finally love you.
Right. What a fucking riddle. That is the deathbed final blow.
And then you get to the end of it and you're like, man, like, God, you were such a dick for 20 years. And then finally you realize that none of that stuff really matters. It's all a game.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with it. Play the shit out of the game. Make $1 billion, get 1 million Facebook follower, Instagram, whatever, do all of it, but the moment that you start to identify with it, that's when you're asking for trouble.
Yeah. Play the game and be mindful of the fact that in the end, it is all a game.
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. This has been a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, man.
And as we're sitting here, it's funny too, because I realized I did have some linearity to my plan here, and that I have my bullet points and my notes. But I'm going to interview again at an undisclosed location in Malibu at a private club in a couple days.
Right.
So I think that'll probably be an addendum to this or something like that. So the things that I didn't get to ask as they specifically pertain to some of the things that I love about your book, I have a second shot at it.
Cool. Yeah.
In closing, Aaron, you've once again, as a second-time guest to the show, actually third, I think, including the short.
As far as the actual, let's just talk you and me, we've had people with Cruz and Matt. And
yeah.
I think we did a live one somewhere too. This might be the fourth time even.
Yeah, I think it is, because we did one at the
Bulletproof conference too.
Yeah.
So that was a little 10-minute, Aaron, tell me about your hips. You should squat more.
But this is, as far as a deep dive, I, as always, have learned a lot from you, as I'm sure our audience has. Who have been 3 teachers or teachings that you might send our audience to go learn from as well?
I've been obsessing. I already talked about it a whole bunch of times. I have a tendency of, there's a neurolinguistic programming term called modeling. And so I will model certain people where I essentially just obsess over their videos or, books or audio, whatever it is. Presently, I'm modeling, hence the whole first half of this conversation, Ram Dass. And I just really value, it's beautiful to get to listen to. I recommend people listen to, there's a guy called East Forest who created an album that he did an interview with Ram Dass. and then he put it to music. So it's this whole album.
Oh, sick.
It's great.
Is that on Spotify?
Yeah.
Oh, man. That'd be a good Journey album to listen to.
And he has a Journey album as well. So he has a psilocybin
Not the band
album.
Journey.
He's got a psilocybin album as well.
Not Steve Perry and Neil Sean Journey, but
so he has, I think it's like 5. I haven't actually listened to this one, but Kyle Kingsbury and Aubrey Marcus were telling me about it. And they're just like, dude, there's nothing like it. If you are a person that utilizes psilocybin in some form of,
the thing whatever. About, and hold that thought on your second recommendation, and I echo Ram Dass. I listen to his podcast. I'm like dying for a new episode. I'm always refreshing the app. Like, God, is there another one? Oh yeah, there's the Ram Dass podcast.
Yeah, no, I listen to it all the time. Yeah, but it's got like 150 episodes.
Yeah, well, I've listened to all of them, and now I'm refreshing. Like, when's the new one out? But the thing is with plant medicine, psychedelics, using those things intentionally, and not that there's anything wrong with using them unintentionally. I just probably wouldn't want to do that myself at this point in life.
Yeah.
Thing about those things is like, because that's what came to mind. I was like, oh my God, I want to listen to some trippy music and like have a mushroom trip or ayahuasca or MDMA or whatever it might be. Although I've not done any of those things, with the exception of ayahuasca in a long, long time. But the thing is like when you do that, the psychedelics always last way fucking longer than the thing you're doing.
Dude.
I learned that at the Pink Floyd laser show in San Francisco, like 1988. We're like, let's drop a bunch of acid and go to the Pink Floyd laser show. Fucking brilliant idea. Get in there, peaking right in the middle of it, timed the peak perfectly, just universe exploding in your face. And then they're like, okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a great night. The thing's like 45 minutes long.
Then your incubator abandonment stuff starts popping up.
And I'm like,
not the time. We were healing.
We didn't think this through, guys. We've got a good 12 hours of balls out tripping ahead of us. And then there I am, like in my like 76 Mercury Monarch, trying to traverse the hills of San Francisco on copious amounts of LSD. So I'm always a bit weary, but I wish you could like encapsulate psychedelic experiences to last as long as the thing you want to do.
That's what that album does.
Really?
Yeah, that's the whole point.
Oh, really?
It's the
so it goes on. It's long.
Yeah, it's like, I think it's like 5 and change hours.
There. Well, my problem is solved.
That is
Thank
the
you,
purpose of the album. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Because I'm interested in such things, but not unless it's done the right way and timed right with the right set and setting and people and whole
What you
vibe.
you just learn to like respect the shit out of the plants.
Yeah.
Like they're not playing.
I do. And that's why I'm not trying to fuck around and like, hey, let me just not think this through and just be like at a party in Hollywood and take mushrooms. Like, nah, dude, that ship has sailed a long time ago.
Well, you're doing, maybe I'm being over dramatic, but you're doing, I got this from Gwenka, the Vipassana guy. You're doing psychological surgery. So if you were doing open heart, soul, brain, whatever surgery at your house with some friends, you'd probably want to like clean it up, organize it, like be like, okay, we're doing some real shit here tonight.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
You're not just like, you leave dishes in the thing and you're just like, get done smoking a cigarette and turn off the TV commercials. Like, you ready to do psychological surgery, guys? Yep, let's go. It's like, don't do that.
That brings me back to, I think it was the first Dead show I went to. Sting opened. This would have been the early 90s, maybe 91, 92 or something like that. And it was at an outdoor arena at the university in Las Vegas. And just like, the perfect set and setting to do, I don't know if it was mushrooms or acid now that I think about it, but whatever it was, I was tripping my ass off. And I was all good when it was like dancing and Jerry and the whole thing. And then I remember going into the porta potty at the concert and having, like the smell of a porta potty when you're on a lot of psychedelics is much more potent. And then kind of just getting stuck in there, sort of tripping out, and it's really hot. And so there's like steamy porta potty energy, and kind of not like I was stuck where I couldn't find my way out, but it was just such a weird experience that I kind of got stuck in there. And it was not a pleasant experience, as you might imagine, because I just went into kind of like not a K-hole, but a whatever hole, acid hole.
I wonder what is it called? Synesthesia, when we can see sounds and hear colors and stuff. I wonder what that smell would look like.
And that was the first of many experiences where I ended up in places with people that were completely inappropriate and not supportive of the experience.
Yeah.
So I agree. I don't want to try to have a plant medicine journey and end up in a porta potty of any sort.
Don't do that.
Who are two other teachers besides Ram Dass?
Well, so I'm coming off, and this is going to sound redundant and probably almost boring, but Alan Watts he's lived like a father figure. So I've listened to, not to toot my Alan Watts horn, but just like thousands of hours of Alan just talking. And so much of the stuff in the book, most of the things that I think are meaningful is pretty much like a continuation of Alan, and those audio recordings just like over and over of like, oh, cool. That's like being infused into this chapter about, the value of walking in nature, and so I think Alan's just great, man. I really value, and I like Alan as well because he was an alcoholic. And so he had
wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah, big time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. He's done another interview with another guy that was a friend of Alan's. He's like a legend in like the, what was it? The world, not hypnosis. There's a term for it. But anyways, he was telling me old stories about, him like walking Alan home from the bar at night and just like he was too drunk to walk. And then,
wow.
So he had a lot of, I would imagine, some splinters to get out of his whatever, psychology, soul, heart, whatever. And so, it's interesting when you see like it's like the wounded healer, and so I think that Alan would, in large part, where a lot of his value had come from was probably his own torment.
That's so fascinating. I had no idea. Yeah, I hear someone like that and I go, God, he's so eloquent. He probably never had a drink in his life. He just has his shit together.
We also have to, with people like that, once you start reading Alan Watts's books and you listen to his discourses, at first when you listen to his discourses, you're like, wow, it's like everything he says is just perfect. Like, where does all this come from? And then you read his books and I'm like, oh, it's his bit. Like he's practiced and honed this in. Like this, he really takes his shit serious.
That makes me feel better because that would be the type of speaker I would aspire to be.
Well, if you want to be you want to be a good speaker,
that
right?
Impactful.
Yeah, write your book. That like that the process of consolidating those ideas and then having an editor go through and refine them and reorganize them. It's like a psychedelic. It's like a psychological surgery in a way. So the editor says, okay, I think your thoughts would be conveyed more clearly if you put this chapter here and maybe said this a little bit differently, and then you reprocess that and you're like, oh yeah, I could say it like that. And you just rehearse over and over and over again. If I'm ever talking about something, like there's a lot of things in this today that I hadn't talked about, a lot of things that I had as well, and the things that were much more coherent are oftentimes things that I've written about.
I'll be damned.
Which is interesting, yeah.
That's cool. Who's number 3?
Number 3? I would say number 3, this is going to sound probably annoying, I'm trying to be clever, but I would say just silence.
We had a nice moment of it for a moment.
Yeah. Like the chronic, especially in the podcast age, and books, and wow, you have all these books, and like have you read them all? And like, oh, now I have book shame because I haven't read all my fucking books. So like, well, I get sent books a lot. Okay, like relax. It's like you got to read all the books. Like you don't need to read all the books. Like I would much rather be hanging with the person that reads the shit out of one book that kind of glazed through for the sake of their ego 1,000 books. So if you can really pay attention to what the heck is going on, and this comes back to a movement conversation, if you can bring attention into the way that you walk into a room, like Ida Rolf said, the way that you walk into a room is the way that you walk through your life. So if you could start to bring that really, astute attention into the contact of my feet on the ground and the breath and the side of my ribs and my back and the carriage of my shoulders. And, how does this room feel? How does this room smell? What's the lighting in this room? Like, there's so much information that we can take in. And it's the same thing. Like if you deeply read a book, there's so much more kind of like messages behind the message if you kind of like, give it the spaciousness to kind of listen to it. Anyways, but beyond all that, I'm meandering. I think getting away from information in general is super valuable. If you take yourself out of that continual consumption, all of a sudden it allows your own internal root system to start to come out and grow. But if you're continually just bombarding yourself with more information to memorize and memorize and memorize and memorize, so I'm smart enough, you miss out on like you just have all these voices being bombarded. So I would say probably, to be at the risk of sounding kind of pretentious and attempting to be clever, I would say silence.
I think that's probably the most profound teacher there is. So I love it. I don't find it pretentious at all. It's quite logical.
Yeah.
Especially for someone like me that I like. I don't know. You ever done Strength Finders? The book Strength Finders?
No.
It identifies your 5 top strengths, and one of mine is a principle called input, and it's where you have this constant thirst for data and information.
Yeah,
and
me too.
You're just a sponge for information. I have that, and I think it's one of the reasons that I'm okay at the stuff that I do.
You're great at the stuff you do.
Thank you.
Yeah.
However, having that, I really notice, like, I always have an audiobook on, always have a podcast on, I'm always reading something. I'm always like, I don't watch movies for fun very often. I don't do a lot of entertainment. It's like, even if I sit down and like watch YouTube, I'm going to learn a song on the guitar. Like,
yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't do a lot of mindless, just chilling. I'm always like, feel like I need to be learning something or I'm wasting my time. Other than that, I meditate a lot, which is, of course, very silent and alone.
Yeah.
But
so
yeah, it's good.
It's
a good reminder to not always have to have like some stimuli and some input going all the time.
Yeah. So full circle, I'll take another stab at the female counterpart that would be a value for you. I'll probably be wrong twice. Would be a woman that could illuminate those aspects to you, and you could find joy in pointlessness in quotations.
Totally. That would probably be the key. You nailed it. So just let me know when you find her.
Yeah.
I'm right here. I almost want to give my address out. It's in Laurel Canyon. It's very near the country store. Let's put it that way. Yeah. If you're a silly woman, let me know. Dude, thank you so much. I love you, bro.
I love you,
I
man.
do. You're such a great guy, and always someone who's been so kind and warm to me, and I really value our friendship. So thank you.
Likewise.
Where can we find you? Website, social media, et cetera, and then we're going to get out of here.
Well, the most meaningful thing that people could probably do would be grab the Align Method book.
Buy the book.
It's absolutely
Buy the book.
Absolutely the most proud. It's the first proud thing I would say I actually have in my life. There's other things, I've been like congratulated on certain things, and it's never felt like I could never really actually like receive it. It'd be like, congratulations, like, oh, like, whatever the thing is. And there's always like, sure. Yeah, great. This is where you congratulate. This is great. This is the first thing because I actually, put so much into it and so much, I think, like heart and authenticity and layers, it encapsulated a lot. And I know undoubtedly that it has the potential to help, anyone that reads it. Yeah, it's the most meaningful thing that I've created. So that would be probably the thing that I would recommend is grab the Align Method book.
Love it, dude.
And then jump over and listen to Luke on the Align podcast.
Yeah.
We'll talk about probably, I don't know what we're going to talk about. We'll talk about all sorts of interesting things, I'm sure.
As we were sitting here doing yours, I'm like, am I going to have anything left to say? I should have talked less because I might be out, but we know that's not true.
Well, we'll see how it goes. And we could, we'll see what the haps is. But
I'm game.
All right.
I'm game.
All right. Cool.
Quick nootropic break, and we'll turn this fire right back on, my friend.
Yeah. So the Align podcast, that's where all of everything is at. So that's where social media is. Instagram's from the most active. That's the website. That's the whole thing. So, but the Align Method book, that's the thing that I'm the most excited about presently.
Sweet. Thanks, brother. I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.